In this video, you will learn about async await, a modern way to handle asynchronous JavaScript code, making it even more readable and easier to understand. Async await is a feature that allows you to write asynchronous code that looks and behaves like synchronous code. I know it sounds weird, but we'll see how this looks in a moment. It's built on top of promises and provides a more elegant syntax for working with them. Async await makes it simpler to read and maintain your code by avoiding callback chains and complex error handling. To use it, you need to declare an asynchronous function with the async keyword. An asynchronous function always returns a promise. Let's do async function, my async function, return hello world. And since this is a promise, we have to do my async function dot then value, and let's do console.log value. Let's run the program, and you'll see hello world. So in this example, we created an async function that returns a simple string. Because the function is declared with the async keyword, it automatically wraps the return value in a promise. So we can then use the then method to log the value to the console. Now, inside an async function, you can use the await keyword to pause the execution of the function until a promise is resolved. So let me remove this code. Let's create an async function fetch data, because we are going to fetch some data from an external API. So what we have to do is have a response equal to await fetch and then URL. And let me show you how this works. So I found this dummy REST API that returns this data. So what I'm going to do is just copy this URL and paste it in here. And the fetch function will retrieve all the information from that URL and store it into the response. But to actually get the data, we have to do const data is equal to response.json. Or actually await response.json, because this is also a time-consuming task and we need to do await before it. Okay, now let's do console.log of data. And now let's use the function. So fetch data dot then value and a callback. Let's run our program. And you will see exactly the data that we saw in the web browser. See user ID, ID and title. Okay, so let me explain you one more time. In this example, we use the await keyword to wait for the fetch function to complete and store the result in the response variable. Then we use the await again to wait for the response.json method to complete and store the result in the data variable. And finally, we log the data to the console. Please note that the await keyword can only be used inside an async function. Now, to handle errors with async await, you can use a try catch block. So before all this code, you can do try catch of error and then place all this code inside the try block. And when we get an error, we can do console.log of the error. Okay, if we run the program, of course, we don't have an error, so the result is printed normally. But if the fetch function throws an error, which it might, we can catch the error and treat it separately.